Okay. All right, Kayla, are you ready to talk about this week's case?
Yes, I am.
All right, so this one is probably gonna, I know that it made me mad, and I know that it made me mad.
Yes.
So I'm guessing it's probably gonna make anyone listening mad, or at least I would hope so. Kaysa isn't feeling well tonight, actually took off, but we will miss her, and I hope she feels better. All right. So, like I was saying, this case is probably going to make you mad. It is referred to as the Dream Killer case. In my opinion, that title alone is a manipulation of the truth. There are many important. Oh, so accidentally whole thing down to the bottom of it. There are many important things we are going to be talking about, but I think the most important facts to look out first and foremost are that there is a man that has been in prison for 16 years for a crime that he did not commit, and the man who was the victim of that horrific crime has never gotten justice. That man's name is Kent Heitwold. Kent was a family man, married to his wife Deborah for 20 years at the time of his death. He and Deborah had two children together, a son Vincent and a daughter Callie Rose. Kent also had a career that he loved. He was a sports editor from Columbia Tribune in Columbia, Missouri. A friend of Kent, Tom Loeffler, wrote in an article for local RCGTV the following. He was a big, gregarious man with a quick smile and even quicker wit. And when I say big, I mean big. He was 6'3", 300 pounds, a really good guy. To know Kent was to like him. To work with him was to like him. To know him is to miss him.
Aw.
No, that was like I. There was no way I couldn't include that when I read it. In the article that was the Tribune article after his death. So, the night of Halloween 2001, Kent was looking late at the Tribune, something that was a pretty common occurrence for him. At around 2:10 a.m., Kent finally calls it a night and says his goodbyes to fellow Tribune co-worker who is also still there, Michael Boyd. Before getting into his car to take off, though, Kent spots a stray cat that he knows likes to hang around the office building. Kent decided to grab some of the cat food he keeps in his car for occasions just like this, so that he can give his stray cat some food. Which, oh my god, like, are you serious right now?
Who needs stray cats?
He kept cat food in his car specifically for that. Sorry, I lost my place. Oh, yes. Kent had decided to grab cat food from his car to feed a stray cat in the area. So, basically, this would unfortunately end up being the last good deed that Kent would ever be able to perform because just after 2:20 a.m., the following call comes into 911. So I'm going to play this 911 call. Not super long.
911, what is your emergency?
We need someone here at the Columbia Daily Tribune.
What's going on?
I'm not sure. I was just told to call 911. There's somebody hurt outside.
Okay, is there anybody that can tell me what's going on there?
We need here.
We're at the main building at the Tribune.
You're at the 101 4th Street?
Yeah.
And what's going on?
In the parking lot behind where Kentucky Fried Chicken used to be. The sports editor, Kent, laying in the ground. Pool of blood. Looks like he's been shot or something. There were two boys out there. Two young guys just a minute ago.
Okay, he's on the parking lot behind the Tribune on the KFC side?
Yes, yes.
Hold on just a second, okay?
All right.
Okay. What's his name?
Kent is his name.
Okay.
I don't know, Heithold or something. Don't go outside.
Okay, who did you see in the area? Who did you see in the area?
I saw two guys in the area.
Were they white or black?
White. I'd say 1920.
What were they wearing?
I don't know. This gal, if I can get her to calm down, she can give a report probably to the police a little bit.
Okay.
She saw them. She walked out to smoke a cigarette, saw them duck down behind the car.
Okay.
I looked out and saw them, and I said, "What's going on?" I knew it was Kent's car, and I said, "Kent," and they didn't look up. Nobody did anything.
Suzanne, can you dispatch that for me?
Somebody's been hurt, man.
Okay, so you saw them duck down behind his car?
Yes. Well, yeah, somebody's been hurt.
All right, so that was an excerpt from the actual 911 call, which it's crazy that they were there and saw the people. Like, I can't imagine being in that situation. Especially, Kayla, you watched the documentary, right? The one on Netflix?
Yes.
Okay, so you saw, like, I was kind of shocked that they showed at the actual crime scene photos of
Oh yeah, like right at the beginning.
whole like I wasn't about to include that because I think it like I don't have anything against that documentary doing it, but like for this, like I felt like it was a little sleazy, so I was like I wasn't gonna include those, but it was crazy to see. Like it looked like a awful scene. And they even think that I think he said at one point that he thought that Kent had got shot. Like that's how bad and like bloody the scene was.
Mhm.
Um, so all right. So the voices you hear on the 911 call are that of Shauna Ornt and Jerry Trump. No relation to that Trump. Just got to throw that one out there right away because he comes up quite a bit in this case. And yeah, so so we do have a Trump involved here. But anyway, uh, Shauna Ornt and Jerry Trump are two janitors working at the Tribune at the time. At the beginning of the call, you can hear Shauna say that somebody is hurt. Soon after, it will come out that one of the men these witnesses saw actually walked up to Shauna and told her that there was somebody hurt and needing help in the parking lot. Kent was found brutally beaten and strangled with his own belt. Some of the evidence reportedly found at the crime scene includes a strand of hair, fingerprints, and bloody footprints leading away from the body. You would think that with the amount of evidence that was at the scene, the investigators would have been able to pin down a suspect quickly. That is not the case, though, and after 2.5 years, investigators still don't have any viable leads. In late 2003, the Columbia Tribune decides to run a story about Kent to try to spark public interest in the case, again uh, to see if they can get anything since it's gone so cold. This is when Charles Erickson sees the article, which includes a composite sketch of the suspect identified by witnesses at the crime scene. Charles, who is 19 at this time and known to abuse all sorts of drugs, sees the sketch and believes it looks like him. So let's take a look here. So there is Charles, that's his mugshot, compared to the composite sketch. I mean, it just looks like any generic white dude. Like, I don't think that
Yeah.
looks like anyone specific. Like, you could pick out areas, but like his mouth doesn't match. And
The way his eyes are shaped.
yeah, the shape of his eyes. The only thing that really is consistent is maybe his nose and maybe his ears. But like, I don't know. But I mean, we'll find out in a little bit some stuff about Charles that might explain that. Um, basically, Charles, his paranoia only begins to grow as he continues to think about the night Kent was murdered, Halloween night 2 years ago. That night, Charles and his friend Ryan, both 17, snuck into a bar that was located in the same neighborhood as the Columbia Tribune. Charles had backed out that Charles had backed out that night. Sorry, Charles had blacked out that night while they were at the bar, something that he was known to do when he parties. Charles begins to obsess over the murder. It's all he can think about. He eventually decides that enough is enough, and he's going to tell Ryan about what has been going on to see if he can remember anything about that night. The issue is, though, that Charles did not have the discussion with Ryan in private. He actually believes he talked to Ryan about it during a New Year's Eve party. Ryan tells Charles that there's no way they killed someone. The night of the murder, Ryan was drunk but not blackout. He took Charles home from the bar they had been at around 1 a.m. Rumors had already begun to circulate, though, and it isn't long before someone calls the Crime Stoppers line. Investigators collect Charles and Ryan's fingerprints and DNA to compare to the evidence found at the scene. None of the physical evidence will ever come back to Ryan or Charles. Even though nothing is pointing at either of the boys, the lead investigators just can't let go of the fact that Charles is going around saying that he did this. So that they decide they're going to bring them both in for questioning. So before we get to the next part of the story, I think it's definitely important to talk a little bit about Charles and Ryan before they were brought in for interrogation. So Kayla, do you want to talk a little bit about Charles?
Yes, I do. Because everything that I found out through the Charles Erickson website that I believe his parents made, he was an I can't say the word. Intellectually gifted child.
Yes.
There we go. Got it out. We're good. Okay. He played the viola in orchestra in elementary school. He sang in elementary and junior high choirs. He's in the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts. And this boy was so active, I could never. He was in the AAU wrestling, USS swimming, United States diving, soccer, football, and he was sponsored by the American Heart Association to jump rope.
That's a thing?
Like what?
That's
crazy.
A lot of
activities.
That is a lot of activities.
Then he met Ryan in 8th grade when they were both doing track. I was like, that's crazy. They were friends forever.
A long time, yeah.
And then in high school, he excelled in marketing classes and did well in a marketing club called DACA, and he earned a partial college scholarship just by competing on state and national levels for that marketing club.
Cool. I didn't know that either.
Like, what high schooler, though?
Yeah, that's like
wants
so
to take marketing classes.
He's just like, okay, like this is good.
Yeah. And then after he graduated, he considered enlisting to the Army, but decided to attend the Mulberry Community College during credits and then transferred to the University of Missouri. And he was living at home while doing this. He focused on his studies and worked at a laundromat.
Yeah, he went through like a little bit of a rough patch, right? When like around the time that this was happening, where he like kind of messed up a little. And one of the things I wanted to bring up too was the fact that they think he did have OCD, which probably played a part in things that are going to happen later on. But yes. Yeah, he was a super ambitious kid, super smart. He just got into partying, and I mean, I feel like we're all there at one point. Some of us are still there.
Yeah.
So a little bit about Ryan. Ryan's parents. I just want to know their whole life story because they just seem like super interesting people. But Ryan was born in Australia, actually, to parents Bill and Leslie. Bill and Leslie had been traveling the world together, a trip that started out as something that was supposed to take 2 years, but ended 10 years later with 2 children. That's one hell of an adventure.
Yeah.
So Bill was a very present father, and he did anything and everything he could with both of his children. Both of Ryan's parents describe him as a sweet and curious boy who had a sense of adventure, but also a desire to be close to those he loved. He was also very athletic, just like Charles. And like you were saying, they met because of track, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so they did all the sports together. They had a lot of really, really similar interests in that regards, and that's why they were friends. As Ryan got older and into his high school years, he maintained a close relationship with his parents, and especially his father, Bill. I don't think it's any stretch to say that they were best friends. From skydiving to weekly basketball games, they spent pretty much all of their time together, which I think is so cool. Like you don't really hear that about like teenagers. Like they're always off like with their friends. They're not
Yeah.
hanging out with their parents anymore. Um, so that brings us back to the present day in the story, which in the story it's March 10th, 2004, and Charles is now sitting in an interrogation room being questioned. He is telling the investigator about the night of October 31st, 2001. He says that he and Ryan were out together drunk at a bar called By George when they ran out of money. At this time, Charles states that Ryan comes up with an idea to rob someone so that they can get more money to continue partying. That is when they come across Kent in the Tribune parking lot, and that is when they decide that he would be the person that they would rob. Other than those details, though, Charles really can't remember anything specific about the murder. In a normal investigation, this would be the point in which the detective would probably begin ruling this person out as a suspect, but that definitely would not happen in this case. So, Kayla, you want to take us through some of what going on here, and let me know when you want me to play the interrogation clip.
Yes. And oh my God. So Charles basically is asking the police, could I have done this? And while he's being interrogated. And what I thought was a little mind-boggling is they never read him his Miranda rights or anything. They just were like, "Oh, we're going to bring you in for questioning," and that's it. And then it starts getting serious.
Yeah.
Telling Charles, like, "Oh, well, your friend Dallas, he gave us this report saying he saw you at this stoplight that's right next to the crime scene." And Charles in his head is like, "Oh, I remember seeing Dallas that night." He doesn't remember where.
Hmm.
So it's like they're feeding him information to connect the dots in his brain. But as we find out later, the report was fake. Dallas never said that to the police. And then they ask him questions about the murder and how he did it, and like basically to walk them through the crime. And he was like, so he was choked. And they're like, yeah. But do you know what was it with? Was it with this?
Hmm.
I don't, or this, or a belt, and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, well, it was this. And they're like, no. And then he finally gets to the belt, and they're like, yeah, it was that.
That's actually the part that I have of the interrogation.
Oh,
So,
thank God. I hate that so much. It makes me so mad.
yeah, seriously. All right, so we're gonna play this. This is from the Unjust and Unsolved podcast, and this is a clip from the interrogation that they had in there. So, go.
Belt in Ryan's hand? Something looked like a rope maybe or a bungee cord?
I don't know.
Okay. You didn't put anything in your hand now?
No. I mean, I don't remember that at all.
Okay. So it's possible Ryan could have strangled this guy with his belt, got the keys, and you not know.
With the man's belt?
Yeah.
His own belt?
Yes. Does that ring a bell?
Not at all. Like, I didn't.
But you saw Ryan strangling him, though.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, so like, I don't know how much more. He literally gave him the information.
It's like, oh, we're not going to leave you breadcrumbs. We're going to leave you a whole loaf of bread.
Yeah, like, oh, you don't know the details here. Let me just you strangled with a belt. Like, what investigator gives up that piece of information?
Dumb one.
Right? Was there anything else? So there was, I mean, basically the whole interrogation was like a lot of that, like a lot of feeding information
And
and
fake reports.
fake reports. Yeah. It is some bullshit. It is some bullshit, Lewis.
And I mean, honestly, before I even like listened to the podcast and they started talking about all the fake reports, I didn't even realize that the cops could do that.
Yeah, they can legally fake a police report. Like that is super sus. Like there's like no
too much power.
line. There's no line. So yeah, this is basically what you described as what Charles is going through. Ryan is also getting interrogated at the same time as Charles, and basically what the investigators do is a super classic thing. They tell Charles that Ryan is turning on him. So I want to play another audio clip from the Unjust podcast. And this is basically them trying to convince him that Ryan is turning on him.
In is the one that's hanging over the edge, and Ryan could care less about it.
Okay.
Okay? Do you understand me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you better start thinking very clearly.
Okay.
Because it's you that is on this chopping block.
Okay.
Am I clear
Yes.
to you?
Yes.
All right. So there we have it. So let's talk a little bit about what's actually going on in the interrogation room from Ryan's perspective. So while Charles is being manipulated into believing he and Ryan actually murdered Kent, Ryan also is being interrogated, like I said. Unlike Charles, though, Ryan is not going to be intimidated or influenced into believing he committed a crime that he knows he did not. The police are persistent, though, and are determined to get a confession out of Ryan. And then that leads us, I believe this is second to last audio clip. But I wanted to include this because I think it's super important to like hear it from their own mouths. Like, no, this is actually what's going on, and this is how they were being treated. So
sometimes things go horribly, horribly wrong.
See, I knew where you're going with this, man.
And the thing about
I
this,
didn't do anything.
if they're going to nail you with it, if they're going to pin this on you, you know, you might as well get it. If that's going to happen regardless, and it looks like they got all this stuff and all this evidence. If they're going to pin it on you, you might as well get it pinned on you for the right reasons.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said to you earlier, man. I didn't. Oh my God. You're trying to get me to admit to something I didn't do. I didn't do it. I mean, take me down and wait until trial, man. Just take me down to jail because I didn't do anything. I'm not admitting to something I didn't do.
Do you understand?
So Ryan is making it very clear he has nothing to do with this. Like, and he's smart too. He says right there, like, it's like you're trying to get me to admit to something I didn't do. And he's totally, totally right about that.
I don't like cops.
Like stuff like this, like it makes it really it's really disheartening. It's really, really disheartening.
Yep.
So that's how Ryan is taking his interrogation. Ryan never says anything that implicates himself or Charles in the murder, even when he learns that Charles has pled guilty and that the prosecutor is planning to take Ryan to trial for first-degree murder of Kent Heitholt. Not only that, but part of the deal Charles made includes his promise to testify against Ryan. So Ryan's family wanted to do everything in their power to help their son because they truly did not believe he had anything to do with what he was being accused of. They decided that they would hire Charlie Rogers, a highly regarded defense attorney out of Kansas City. Unfortunately, Charlie turned out to be less than expected, to put it nicely. He was ill-prepared and grossly incompetent, from showing an outdated map of the crime scene to calling Ryan to the stand without any warning or preparation. Can we talk about that for a second? Like, did you watch that part in the documentary where he's like, literally,
Yes.
the prosecutor had to point out that he had an old map. And he was like, oh, crap.
And then, like, the part where they had him on the stand, I was like, this is so cringy.
I know,
Because
and like, I
that's
feel
probably
bad.
how I would act.
I know,
Like, this
because
is
like,
stupid.
he's just like, you can tell, like, obviously he's not taking it seriously, because like, it's like, how are you going to convict someone of a murder when there's literally no physical evidence? There's actually evidence pointing away from them, because they have physical evidence and none of it matches either one of them. So, yeah, I can't believe that. And when Kathleen Zellner, who we'll talk about, I think she made a little comment about it. Like, she couldn't believe that someone would do that.
Yeah, and the prosecutor at the beginning of the trial told the jury there is no physical evidence to match them.
Yeah, straight up, like, straight up. And they spent a bunch of money on this Charlie Rogers guy. So as if Ryan's terrible attorney wasn't enough, there was also the testimony of Charles to solidify his guilt, along with that of eyewitness Jerry Trump, who also took the stand for the prosecution. Trump, the voice heard on the 911 call, testifies that he was able to identify Ryan and Charles after seeing a newspaper article sent to him by his wife while he was in prison. The article was about the arrest of the two suspects in the Heitholt case. Jerry states that after seeing the photos, it made him realize that Ryan and Charles were the two suspects he saw that night. When the other eyewitness, Shauna Ornt, took the stand, neither the prosecution or the defense actually asked her if Ryan was the person she saw on the scene that night. So, like, neither one of them asked. And if they had, she would have said that no, he was not the person that she had seen, but they never asked.
Or even if Ryan's lawyer interviewed her to figure out what she knew before the trial.
Yeah.
Like,
well, how about that? Like, what a concept. Do your job.
Massive brain fart for you, Mr. Lawyer.
Yeah, so like we keep saying, there's zero evidence that implicates Ryan or Charles in the murder. Zero. But the jury decides to convict Ryan Ferguson to 40 years in prison for second-degree murder and robbery. Having a jury come back with a conviction based on nothing but eyewitness testimony was a devastating blow, to say the very least, but it was not going to stop Bill Ferguson, Ryan's father, from clearing his son's name. And my final clip that I'm going to play is from the documentary that we keep talking about called Dream Killer. And it's Ryan's father, what he says after Ryan gets convicted. And I love this man. I think every dad in the world should be like this dad. Okay, there we go.
Bill Ferguson.
And what's your relationship to Ryan?
He's my son. And I'm totally convinced that he is innocent.
Have you done what you could to try and demonstrate Ryan's innocence?
You know, I thought up to a few minutes ago I had, but apparently, obviously since I'm an amateur at this, I'm going to learn a lot more about this. And I'm going to prove my son's innocent, and so will my family. It's going to be really very difficult. And if he gets the jail sentence that I'm hearing, I will never live long enough to see him outside of jail.
Okay, that like makes me like want to cry every time I hear him say that.
It's so sad.
I know, and you guys definitely have to watch the documentary. It's on Netflix. It's called Dream Killer. I highly recommend it, especially just for him alone. He's a great person. So Bill, as you heard, like he was also pretty dedicated in that clip. Sounded like a man on a mission. And he was. He begins his own investigation, and to say he was thorough would be an extreme understatement. Because of Bill's dedication to his son, he gained the attention of wrongful conviction groups across the country. And in 2009, Kathleen Zellner, made famous for taking over Stephen Avery's case, which is documented in Netflix's series Making a Murderer, starts working on Ryan's case pro bono. Uh, Kayla, do you want to tell us what Miss Kathleen does for Ryan
Yes, I
and
would.
the hearing she gets?
In 2012, Kathleen is able to get a habeas corpus hearing for Ryan. During the hearing, Jerry Trump recants his statement. And he tells the judge that Prosecutor Crane pressured him into testifying. Trump was on parole at the time of his questioning for a conviction of endangering the welfare of a child. Trump states that Crane was the one who showed him the photos and that Crane insinuated at the time that it would be helpful if Jerry were to say that Ryan and Charles were the two people he saw at the scene of the crime.
Yeah. And I know I sent you the thing I found about Jerry Trump, and I didn't want to include that slide, but I kind of do want to talk about it because I think it is a little important. His endangerment charges, because I went online and I literally found his actual arrest records, and he was it sounds like it was some sort of like sexual assault of a child. So although he does write later on by recanting, and the stuff he says to Ryan was very heartfelt, I still have to I keep that in the back of my mind about him because he was convicted and in prison for it at one time.
Yeah, I started tearing up when they showed him recanting his statement
Yeah.
and talking to Ryan, and I'm just an emotional person in general.
Me too. No, I was like, oh my God, he's gonna cry because he really does. He like tears up. He looks at him like I forget who asked him. It might have been Kathleen. Whoever asked him, like, do you want to say something, like, anyone? And he just looks directly at Ryan and just apologizes to
I think he realizes what the prosecutor did was wrong.
Yeah.
And he deep down felt terrible. And I believe Kathleen said that he recently converted to Mormonism.
Yeah. So it was like part of like getting into the religion is he had to basically like repent for all of his prior misdoings or sins or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that in about Trump. Trump, not that one. Anyway,
Trump.
All right, go ahead.
So another witness that recanted their story was Dallas Mallory. Dallas also states that Prosecutor Crane pressured him into giving a statement about the night of the murder. In the statement, Dallas said that he saw Ryan and Charles while he was stopped at a red light near the scene of the crime. In the statement, Dallas also says that Charles ran up to him stating, "We beat someone down." It comes out during the hearing that Dallas didn't even have a license at the time of the murder, let alone a car. So there's no way the statement he gave could have been true. Like,
at all. Like, and
I didn't even have a car.
And I love Bill Ferguson here coming in strong again. His little investigation also showed like he went to that light at that time of night, and it was one of the ones that like is on a timer, so it changes to like a blinky yellow light. So it literally wasn't possible at all, even if Dallas Mallory had been illegally driving a car that wasn't his own, because that light is not red at that time of night.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then Shauna Ornt, the other eyewitness that testified that Crane tried to threaten her into testifying that the men she saw the night of the murder were Ryan and Charles. Unlike Jerry, Shauna never agreed to go along with what Crane was saying. If you remember, though, during the first trial, neither the defense or the prosecution asked Shauna to identify who she saw that night was in the room, meaning Ryan or Charles. Like,
Yep. So she never incompetence.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other word for it. Just like put this case next to like the definition in the fucking dictionary.
Yeah. So she was never able to tell the court her full story. And then finally, we get back to Charles. He takes the stand and recants his entire statement. He tells the court that he doesn't remember anything from that night or the following morning. He, like everyone else so far, also states he was pressured into a statement by Crane. Crane was threatening him with first-degree murder and with the possibility of the death penalty if he did not take the plea deal the DA was offering. He also states that he continued to keep up the lie after testifying because Crane threatened to take the plea deal away if Charles' story changed at all, meaning that he could be facing the death sentence again.
Which they bring that up in this hearing, like, what? How could you take the plea deal away? Like, I don't know.
And it blows my mind that in the hearing, when he's telling his statement, he says that I did it all. Ryan wasn't there. He didn't do anything.
I know.
And at this point, still thinks he killed.
Yeah, he's like, and it breaks my heart. And like when Kathleen went to interview him, like she was like floored that he still thought that he had any part in this.
Yeah.
And the fact that like dangling the death penalty over someone's head in a case where there's again zero physical evidence. Keep throwing that one out there to point. There's physical evidence. None of it points to these suspects. And they're not suspects because it's all just dumb.
What I found that was interesting, and I don't remember what podcast it was on. I believe it was True Crime Garage.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did they do one on it? I didn't even know that they did one.
I think so. Yeah. I think it was that one.
I'll have to look at
it. But they said that almost every single false confession has death penalty on the table.
That's so fucked, dude.
And that is why they confess. Because they're like, I don't want to be put to death.
Yeah.
Goes to trial and they convict me.
Yeah. See, that's one reason, like, I am very on the fence with the death penalty because there's people I strongly believe deserve it, but then there's cases like this where it's used to manipulate innocent people.
Yeah.
So that was basically everything that happened in the habeas corpus hearing. So everything, like, they laid it all out. And what this was for was to, like, try to get him a new trial, if anything, at all. So we're going to fast forward 6 months, and there's finally a decision about the habeas corpus hearing, but it is not what anyone was expecting. The judge decided that the evidence presented was not enough to allow Ryan a new trial. The judge ruled that Charles Erickson's testimony could not be trusted because his story had changed so many times. He also cited that Jerry Trump's recantation would have no effect on the jury. Like, basically saying, like, even if that wasn't there, like, he still would have gotten convicted, so it doesn't matter. And Kathleen Zellner in the documentary, she was like about to kill this judge, it looked like. Like, she was pissed.
Oh yeah, and didn't they bring Prosecutor Crane in?
They
did. The habeas corpus?
They did, that little rat face. Do I have I thought I had a slide of him.
Just
no.
Because I believe she started questioning him and he was basically just like, I plead the fifth.
Yeah, I had a picture of him. Yeah, and she was like, huh?
Like, I would also like to point out that this prosecutor, dimwit prosecutor, is now a judge.
Oh, yeah.
He still is.
I think he is because the podcast that I listened to that got me interested in this was very, very, very new. Like it had just been released.
Oh yeah.
And I know that the girl on there was like, she said it about 10 times. Like, this dude's a fucking judge. Now,
Yeah.
this guy is a judge, which is absolutely terrible. And that seems to happen all the time. It's like these prosecutors do shady shit and then nothing happens, even though the whole universe seems to know about it. And all of a sudden, boom, you're a judge. Okay.
Ridiculous.
It is. So the decision handed down by the judge was devastating. It felt like the last bit of hope Ryan had was just taken away. It wasn't long, though, before Bill and team began doing anything and everything they could to get Ryan's story out to the public. They had a billboard put up of the composite sketch of the two suspects 2 days after the verdict was sent down. And Bill said that they actually had this like waiting in case it didn't go their way. So they already had this prepared, and it was basically like, hey, like this is still unsolved. My son didn't do it. Here's the dude that did. Here's his sketch. So the idea was to let the police and public know that they were not giving up and that there was still a killer walking free while their son was sitting in prison. They also do a huge social media blitz that garnished them over 50,000 followers from all around the world, all in support of getting Ryan justice. And that's Ryan's dad's car. He's adorable. Can I just say too that I think that Ryan Ferguson he reminds me of Jim Halpert a little bit. Just a little Jim from The Office.
Is that to be like from The Office?
Yeah, from The Office. But yeah, so his dad went like ham. They did like YouTube, Facebook, anything. He had this car. So after the habeas corpus ruling, the next step is an oral argument to appeal the verdict handed down by to basically appeal the verdict that they handed down. During the appeal, Kathleen brings up that there was a Brady violation in the case. And a Brady violation is basically when the prosecutor withholds information from the defense that could benefit the case. So, I mean, take that right there. So, the defense was led to believe that Trump, of his own volition, went to the prosecutor's office and told Crane that he recognized the photos of Ryan and Charles in the newspaper as the two suspects he had seen the night of the murder. Crane knowingly lied to the defense about the circumstances in which Jerry Trump identified the suspects, because Jerry Trump's wife did not show him that article. Freaking Crane, crusty little Crane showed him the article and was like, yo, dude, this would be really good if you were to say this, because he was probably holding something over his head about his parole for those child endangerment charges. Like, I can only imagine what was being held over his head. So he knowingly lied to the defense about that. So all right, so that, along with multiple other Brady violations, was finally enough to convince the court that Ryan's conviction should be vacated and that there was not enough evidence for another trial. 2 months after the habeas appeal, Ryan was finally released from prison and he's not going to be tried again. So, luckily, the judge in that case looked at it and was like, no freaking way. This is not. The trial was not fair, first of all. Second of all, there is no evidence to try Ryan in this freaking murder.
Zero.
Zero. Zero, zero, zero.
Absolutely nothing matches. They were never at that scene. Ever.
And the part in the documentary that got me was, I thought it was cool that 48 Hours happened to be filming when Ryan's parents got the notification that the habeas hearing went in their favor. So they actually got to film the call that they had with Kathleen, and he got let out the same day that same day, as soon as the judge handed down her verdict, he was let out and he was able to reunite with his family finally. At the beginning of the stream, I mentioned that there were going to be a lot of details, and by now I'm sure you agree, like there's a shit ton that happened in this case that I didn't even like touch on. There's so much more. Um, I also told you that there were two very important things to remember about this case. There is a man that has been in prison for 16 years for a crime that he did not commit. And the man who is the victim of that horrific crime has never gotten justice. Those two facts are still true to this day. Ryan got justice in all of the for all of the prosecutorial misconduct uncovered in hang on. Ryan got justice and all of the prosecutorial misconduct uncovered in order to get him free should also be enough to free Charles. But Charles is not free. And we cannot, as a society, forget that. Like, literally, like, why is this guy still in jail? If Ryan is out because of reasons he's out, why is Charles not out?
Exactly, because literally everything that came out in the habeas corpus hearing, like, you would think they'd be like, oh, well, if the prosecutor convinced all of these people to lie on the stand and commit perjury and they could go to jail, then why wouldn't he do that to Charles as well?
Exactly. There's literally no reason for Charles to still be in jail. He should have been set, in my opinion, he should have been set free the minute Ryan was set free.
Yeah.
And like Ryan, obviously Ryan and Charles are not best friends or anything. Like Ryan has every reason to have some bad feelings towards Charles. But he is quoted as saying like Charles is a lot of things, but he's not guilty. He's not guilty. No, Marvel, Charles isn't free. He's still locked up. We also can't forget, though, that the people who are actually responsible for killing Kent Heitholt have never been caught, and that the police are not actively investigating the case because, in their eyes, Charles pled guilty and is in prison, so case closed. The amount of injustices in this case are literally too vast to summarize. The bottom line is that both Kent and Charles deserve better than what they've been given. They both deserve justice and they both deserve peace. Neither of which will happen if our justice system refuses to acknowledge that Charles Erickson did not murder Kent Heitholt. But
ridiculous.
So ridiculous. Well, thanks, Kayla. I had fun, like always.
Even though this one made me really angry, I did too.
I know, right? Chat, do you guys have any other questions or anything about it? This was pure bullshit. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. If you guys do end up having questions or want to know if you want any of the sources that I used, you're free to check out the Discord. Just ask me and I will add you to the True Crime Tuesday channel. That's where I post all of the links to what we watch and listen to for these streams beforehand. Oh, and this will be up on YouTube. Because apparently that's a thing now.